Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm president of the school board, Raymond Mesa. We have some dignitaries here, elected officials. Commissioner Owens, if you could please stand so you can get recognized. Here they are. Commissioner Wardlaw. Thank you for being here, sir. And I'd like to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to be here today. I know you have a busy schedule away, from your family and work. You have probably not gotten home from work yet. But this is so important for us to have your input and be supportive of information that we disseminate to each and every one of you. Our district has lots of needs, as you will see, and it is that time of the year where we're working on the budget, trying to stretch that dollar to the best ability that we can, and we do that with lots of detailed information workshops that we have throughout the summer and information such as the one that we're going to disseminate today. But again, it is so important that we have your input and support in every endeavor that we have with the district. And so with that, I'd like to say thank you. I'd like to introduce the rest of the board members that we have here tonight. To my right, I have Amy Haynes Sanders. Would you please stand? We have Mr. Ken Smith. And we have Mr. Fred Contreras. Again, as I mentioned, we tried to float a bond. It was not successful, but we have those needs that are still present with us, and we try to do as much as we can every year so that we can, again, address those needs were identified. Oh, we have Ms. Jana Gonzalez as well, board member. So we're trying to identify those needs that, again, a committee of parents and community members identified in our district. And so we're not able to do that all at once, but we're trying to do as much as we can with the money that we have every year. And so with that being said, we are going to provide some slides for you, and I will try to see if I can see him from here. I think, yeah. One of the most important things is take care of our employees and employee benefits and, of course, salaries. We try to do that every year to at least provide an increase. And sometimes we look at different scenarios. We have like 4 different ones, and what can we afford? And so with that being said, that would be a cost of $2.4 million annual estimated costs. With our security needs, with the times that have changed nowadays, we try to make sure that every campus has a single point of entry, doors that lock from behind, and doors that cannot open from the outside. We have many campuses that have so many exterior doors. It's not one enclosed building, and so we want to make sure that we have everything in place so that people from the outside do not have access only through the single point of entry, which is going to be in the office, and that is going to be a point where your license will be asked for, and make sure that individuals that are able to attend the school premises are allowed. And so we're trying to do something for the elementary campuses. And at this point, we're looking at possibly security officers in the elementary schools. We have them in secondary. And so we are trying to figure out how we can best address that need of having security in the elementary campuses as well. And of course, replace security cameras. As I mentioned, the bigger campuses, such as high school, middle school, some of the other areas, larger areas, have security cameras, but we do not have them in every building, every school. And so we're trying to find a means of purchasing security cameras and possibly officers, and then handles, as I mentioned, from that close from the inside. You're not able to access entry into those areas behind the schools. And then, of course, keyless entry. This is something that employees have with their badges. They're able to open the doors. We're able to, again, have information as to who entered that building last. And if there's something that does happen, we're able to go back and trace and find out who was the last person that entered the building. But those are security measures that we take. That annual estimated cost would be $870,000. And of course, there's always sustainability measures that we take. And some of our older buildings, I mean, we still had hallways that had paneling. And so we're trying to spruce up every area of our schools and make them inviting and, of course, a better environment for all. So we're looking at interior and exterior painting. And, of course, heating and air conditioning. There's a lot that goes on during the summer. If you go through high school, for example, you see that the major renovation or, I guess, happening that is going on is replacing the old air conditioning system, the coolers that were at the high school. And those require a lot of attention because not only do they contain asbestos and we have to remove the asbestos, but it has to be done in a time span where there's no activity. And it seems to be there's always something going on at the high school, whether it's summer school or students that are still trying to accrue credit for their graduation. And so that is going on at this point. Classroom furniture. In that, we have furniture that is outdated. A lot of times is in need of repair. And so we are trying to not only improve the furniture aspect in regard to modern furniture that is used nowadays, which is could be modular and not necessarily the student desk that we used in 20 years ago. We're trying to modernize, again, a lot of the furniture needs. Technology equipment, and again, that includes everything from Head Start all the way up to high school. There's always need for technology, always need to upgrade. We have an excellent person now in technology that we're doing it in phases. Again, what are the needs for the next 5 years? Trying to address those, and then, as we come along, trying to address the other additional 5-year needs for technology. Parking lot and maintenance paving. I think when you drive around to the different campuses, you will see that every campus has something to address, whether it's that parking is not sufficient, whether the parking is on the outside and not on the inside. We have issues regarding paving and then maintenance as well, which is a lot of times it's just the way that the foundation material is not good enough to be able to hold the pavement, and so it has to be redone completely. And that would be a $2.4 million just cost annual commitment. And then transportation, fleet, and service vehicles. Not too long ago, I heard that we retired a vehicle that had something like 800,000 miles on it. So you can see that they're used to the very end, and then we either auction them off and try to get that money for surplus so that it'll go back into the transportation needs. But we try to, again, upgrade our fleet, and this is for maintenance workers and people that work in making sure that our building's up to par, whether it's painting, electrical, welding, and so forth. Facility and campus replacement, redesign, $18.5 million. That would be for a new elementary campus, which would be built at Cardwell at a cost of $17 million. And then Del Rio Middle School design or redesign and cost to be determined. This is where we realize that campus has an enrollment of 1,600 students. There are so many students there that we've talked about so many different redesign ideas, like a magnet school, and possibly taking somewhere around 500-600 students from that campus and making it more manageable. As it is right now, it is one of the biggest middle schools I think when we looked it up, I think it's the second largest in the state of Texas. I think there's one bigger one than Del Rio Middle School. It makes it real hard to manage because of the number of students that we have enrolled in that campus, and again, the traffic area, and it's so big a campus that we're trying to redesign that, and then possibly again having, as I mentioned, we talked about possibly a magnet school, possibly taking some 500 students from there. It could be the redesign of sixth grade and making a campus available for more students coming from Del Rio Middle School. But the whole redesign, the cost has yet to be determined. And again, district renovation needs. I mentioned that we had still paneling in some of the hallways in some of the schools, the older schools. We need to renovate a lot of the classrooms. I remember when having taught and worked with the district 37 years, we used to call it Border Patrol Green. Every classroom was like Border Patrol Green. And I think if you go to some of the older buildings, you still see some of the buildings that have that Border Patrol Green. And these are very old buildings, and so we try to do as much as we can with the very little money that we can have to renovate. We have started painting a lot of the schools, the interior as well as the exterior. In some the schools, we have the cafeteria area needs to be expanded, and so that work will need to be done at some point. The same thing with renovate the restrooms. High school again is an area that is completely being gutted and renovated as far as the restrooms. That is, the high school might look modern, but I graduated from there in 1969, just to give you an idea. It's an older school, and so we have not renovated the high school in so many years, and now if you go, the restrooms again are being gutted out and renovated to make it look pleasant and inviting for all the students and staff. Flooring replacement is another area that we're looking at. Again, there are many needs throughout the district, and so we're addressing flooring needs as well as replacing the water fountains. I don't think I've ever experienced such a hot year as in regard to the weather. When students do go to outside areas, there have to be water fountains in the immediate area. And so some of these water fountains are not in repairable condition, and so we are replacing the old water fountains with new water fountains. Estimated cost, $14.8 million. Those are just renovation needs. At this time, I would like to introduce our Chief Financial Officer, Jana Valdez. This is an area that we'd like to, again, improve in our securing of funds to address some of these needs. We understand that we can't do that in 1 year. It's going to take a number of years, but we're trying to tackle these needs in a small, I guess, at a section at a time, so that we can all get all the work that is needed done. And so Jana is going to give you some information in regard to some funding that could be available.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, Mr. Mesa. Good evening, and thank you for being here. Thank you for this opportunity for allowing us to review the tax ratification election process with you. The tax ratification election process is part of an opportunity for our district with our tax rates. It will provide additional funding, but there is a timeline that's related with this tax ratification election process. Our school district has a total tax rate right now of 1.1598. School districts in the state of Texas have two parts to their tax rate. Maintenance and operation for our school district is at $1.04, and maintenance and operation is the main operating fund for our school district. And the other tax rate is interest and sinking, which is 0.1198. This tax rate is solely used for the payment of outstanding debt. Again, school districts in the state of Texas have 2 tax rates. The reason that this is very important is because how we classify our tax rates when we send them to the state is how they provide funding. What is a tax ratification election? This would be restructuring of our current tax rate, not an increase to the overall tax rate, but it would simply take the pennies that we currently have allocated to interest and sinking and allocate those pennies to be classified as maintenance and operation, so that our maintenance and operation tax rate can increase from $1.04 to $1.1598. We would maintain our total tax rate, which is 1.1598. However, by restructuring our district tax rate, we would submit this reclassification to the state in order to allow us the opportunity for the state to provide us additional funding. The reason this is important for us to explain is because the legal language that is tied to any type of election can be very confusing, and also because we do have those 2 tax rates. One of them, again, INS, to pay debt, and maintenance and operation is for our main operating fund. But current law allows school districts to use either tax rate to pay for debt. With that law, we would like to transfer the pennies from our interest and sinking to our maintenance and operation, and this our district would be able to generate additional state funding without increasing the tax rate, so without increasing the tax burden to local taxpayers. And regardless of whether the TRE election passes or fails, our tax rate will remain the same as it has been for the last 2 years of $1.1598. We consulted with some school finance company, which is called Moak & Casey. They took our financials, and as you can see here, in the year 17-18, this is we generated between we generated $81 million between maintenance and operation and interest and sinking. So between our general fund and our interest and sinking fund, our district generated $81 million. Next year, on 18-19, with our certified appraisal values, we are experiencing an increase in our appraisal values because of a wind farm, which our district would see an increase of almost $4 million. However, by restructuring our tax rate and submitting that restructured tax rate to the state, that same tax rate would generate $88 million instead of $85. And from that same tax rate generating additional dollars, we would still pay our debt, and our district would still gain an additional $3.5 million in the 18-19 school year, and in the future school years, our district would gain an additional $1.6 million. So again, this is additional funding for our district based on how the state provides funding based on our tax rate. If you were to Google tax swap or tax ratification elections, you could see, and I put the dates on here, there's several school districts that have taken advantage of this opportunity. A tax ratification election is available as a law. It's available for school districts. However, not every school district benefits from it. Again, you only benefit from it depending on your appraisal value, depending on your tax rate, depending on where you fall within all of the complex school finance law. But there are school districts, and you could see One school district increased by 13 cents, and according to their estimates, they will receive 450,000. McAllen ISD, 11.5 pennies, would generate 7 million. Another district only raised 2 pennies. They only transferred 2 pennies over from their INS to their M&O to generate an additional 80,000. Again, this is an opportunity that exists for school districts, and I'd like to take the opportunity to look for it, Google it, tax swap news or tax ratification election news. There are other districts that are taking advantage of this opportunity right now, because the state has not provided additional funding for school districts. So this is an opportunity that we identify that would benefit our district. There is a timeline that's tied to this. We will be publishing our tax rate notice on July 31st. So on July 30th, we will have another budget workshop where we invite you to join us, where we will share more information on our general fund. And the July 30th workshop will lead us to the mandated August 20th meeting, which is the last date to call an election. In order for us to have a tax ratification election on November 6th, we must, the last day that we can call this election is August 20th, and August 20th would be the date that we present our tax rate to the Board of Trustees and our budget as well. So our budget and our tax rate and calling the election will all be tied together in order to be able to follow the election calendar that's set. Again, the fate of the tax ratification election will be decided by district voters November 6th. And in accordance with state tax election requirements, the proposal on the ballot will only mention the raising of the maintenance and operation tax. It will not mention that we're reducing the interest and sinking tax rate. Again, that's why we really, I do really appreciate that you came out, because we really want you to understand that the total tax rate will not change. It's simply restructuring our tax rate in order to benefit from additional funding from the state. And I'll hand it over for Dr. Rios if y'all have any questions.
Thank you, Jana, Connie, and thank you everyone for attending. Before we move to the next part of the presentation, we want to make sure that everyone understands what a tax ratification election is. So if you have any questions related to this process, we'd like for you to have an opportunity to have those questions answered. And then we'll ask Board Member Contreras to come up here for some remarks and solicit some input. So are we doing okay in answering what a tax ratification election is? Yes, sir.
Why would they need you to do this to give you money that they could already give you? What's the purpose behind it?
The state legislature does their funding formulas.
Don't understand.
And this is how they've chosen to provide the funding. They allow us the opportunity to work within the system to garner more money in state revenue. But why they do that?
What's the effect on future debt? If you issue future debt and you don't have an interest in sinking fund, what is your issue or ability to issue future debt without that interest in sinking?
Okay. Once the interest in sinking fund goes away, okay, it doesn't exist anymore, we would have to go back to the voters because they're the ones that approve the current interest in sinking fund. Mm-hmm. So if 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now, we wanted to go back and have a bond election, it would have to be through a vote again. And the state won't care about that. The state does not care what you do with your interest in sinking fund, so as long as you ask for permission anytime you change the maintenance and operation, the M&O tax fund.
Okay.
The state formulas don't make sense because obviously so many people could do this, but that is what they are, and those are defined by the legislature. Yes, ma'am.
Could you explain it to me, like just very simple, what exactly this is going to do?
Okay, I'll try to give the explanation that I gave when we made the presentation. Let's pretend that you have your savings, your family savings, in two different bank accounts. Okay? One you bank here in Del Rio, and the other one you're saving your money just somewhere in San Antonio. Okay? The bank in San Antonio, let's just say for every $1,000 you have, it gives you $100. But the bank in Del Rio, for every $1,000 you have, is going to give you $150. So it makes sense to move your money from your bank in San Antonio to your bank in Del Rio because you would get more in interest. Well, except in this case, it's not your savings, it's your taxes that you're moving from one bucket to the next, because then the bank, which in this case is the state legislature, gives you more money. It rewards you more for having it in that pool. Is that okay? You get it? I used to be a teacher. Thank you. What we want to make sure that we understand, first, that it means no new taxes, no increases in the tax rate. And whether the TRE passes or doesn't pass, the tax rate remains the same. The only difference is that if the TRE passes, the state gives us more money. That's the only difference. Question?
I have a question. You're going to be at nearly the max on your M&O if you move all the money to that bucket, right? You're only going to be a penny away from the maximum that's allowed.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? $1.17 is the max. Are you concerned that 3 years down the road, when you need to give raises or you need to hire more staff or do other things from a maintenance and operations standpoint, that you don't leave yourself enough cushion to be able to do that?
We had this conversation with the board last night. And the reason I'm not concerned is because in predicting voter activity, I think that in this case, the voters would possibly approve the passing of this because it's no increase to the taxes. I think that if we came back to try to increase taxes 2-3 years from now, but it was actually going to be an increase where they were going to pay more money, it wouldn't pass. So when we talked about it with the board yesterday, we agreed that we would probably never consider increasing taxes. And most districts that have taxes above the $1.04 have either done it because of a TRE, or you find an increase in taxes where there's just very low property wealth, and they have to increase them to survive. So you're right in that it wouldn't leave us cushion, but I think that the feedback that we have gotten is that if we ever try to increase taxes where we actually have a dollar increase, we wouldn't be successful anyway. Yes, sir.
With the students that are going to Comstock, is the school district losing like per student a certain amount of money every year because these group of students are going to a different school district? Yeah. How is that affecting?
Yes, anytime your enrollment decreases, whether students go to a charter school or Brackett or Comstock, your funding from the state decreases because they fund you based on enrollment. That's part of the formula.
And so I know it came out in the article in News Herald a while back about what was about the busing them to Comstock. So is the local taxpayer footing the bill to Comstock so Comstock can get enriched in having a bigger student base? I mean, are we actually helping another school district by shipping students? And here we're talking about money and the bottom line, barely having money to pay teachers and all this, but then we're sending students to another district. I mean, isn't that also something that needs to be addressed?
Well, I'd like to briefly address that. First, I think that the students that go to Comstock, I don't think they're making Comstock rich, although I don't support them going to Comstock. I'd like for them to go here in our district. But I can pretty much guarantee you that Comstock is not a rich district, and they need the students to stay afloat. So I understand why they're doing that. Now, having said that, I'm responsible for this district, and I like for the students to stay here. And I feel very confident that the programs that we offer are as good or better than any other district. But yes, we do lose money, but the state legislature has spoken loud and clear that for this year, there are grant waivers, and then they'll address that. But it's really out of our hands at this point, because again, the Commissioner of Education, probably through pressure from the governor's office, has issued that waiver for them. Thank you for your questions. Any more? All right. I think that this group understands what the TRE is. I'm going to ask Board Member Contreras to step up and make some comments and introduce a feedback that we're going to ask. In advance, I'll tell you that when we ask for the feedback, you're either going to be able to do it right now on your phones if you have your telephone. And so if you have it, and it'll be great. Okay, so Mr. Contreras, thank you.
Thanks. Once again, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it because this is the only way we're going to find out what you think about the TRE and what we plan to do. And as you saw, the school district has many needs. And I myself was part of the 2016 committee that addressed some of those critical needs, and I believe I see some of you in the audience that were part of that group. And we identified some of those needs. Unfortunately, the bond back then didn't pass, but they're still there. Those needs are still there that need to be addressed, and that's one way for us to address them. They're not going to be done in 1 year. They're going to be collectively done within several years. You know, but as you saw, our number one priority was our students and our teachers. And everything else is going to be secondary as we move along through year and year. But as you saw, you know, your input, it's important to us because that's the only way we're going to get things done. You know, having your input and knowing exactly what we want to do should be our importance and, of course, the board members. So I do thank you for being here. I also want to see who's the first time that they're being here at the school, by the way, you know. Has everybody been here? It's your first time, Ms. Cervantes? Wow. Well, we invite everybody. This is your school, by the way. You know, walking the halls, which I hadn't done, brings back a lot of memories for me back when I was 8th grade. So I do thank you for being here, and I'll go ahead and let the next presenter.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sandra Hernandez, the Administrative Director. And we're going to assist the board today, this evening, with an interactive poll. So we'd like to have you take out your cell phones. And you're going to go to menti.com. I will pull it up. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to try to restore a session here. Yes, and we're going to try to see if I can get this loaded up. If I can ask my technicians. If you can bear with me. This will be menti.com, www.menti.com. and we're going to ask everyone to use the code 94. There we go. I think they're assisting us here. There we go. There we go. So the code that you're going to enter is 949820. And for those of you who are in the audience here or in the audience online, and we are actually live streaming this presentation today, you can also join in this interactive poll. So it's going to ask you a few questions. We're going to start off with the first one, and that first one is, who's sitting in the audience? So we want to know who you are. Are you a parent? Are you a business owner? Are you a retiree? Do you work for the government? Are you an educator? And this is live, so you can see your contribution or your input. And don't worry, it will not record your phone number. It'll only record your response. Okay, and just by a show of hands, if we're ready to move on to the next question, you can raise your hand and then we'll let you go to that next question. So it'll give us what we have at this point is roughly 39% of you are parents, educators are at 24%, 16% are community members. So we're going to go to that next question. So the next question is, would you support a tax ratification election, a TRE, otherwise known as a tax swap? Yes, no, or you're undecided. Okay. It's easy enough. And just by a show of hands, see if we're ready for that next question. Okay. So right now, most of you are saying yes, you would support this. And then this next one will give you an option to choose two items. Which current unfunded school district needs do you see as a priority? Earlier, Mr. Mesa shared with you a PowerPoint. And so the options here were, should the district look at district sustainability needs, security needs, new facilities, district-wide renovation needs, or employee benefits. And you're going to choose two. And I'd like to remind those of you who are in the audience, if you don't have your cell phone, we will leave this poll on. So you were handed a card. Please write down www.menti.com. Use the code. It'll only go through those same three questions. We'll have it up this evening. Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much for your input. And here we are looking at security is certainly based on the poll that most of you think of security as being a very high priority for us. I'd like to thank you for your input. This will certainly help our school board members take a look at your input.
Thank you. I'm going to pass the mic to our board member, Kent Smith, for some closing remarks. I wanted to clarify something that Commissioner Owens asked me to clarify. The money that you saw up here that we get as our annual budget, I think at one point it was 81, 83 million. I want to be clear, that's not tax dollars. That's a combination of state aid and tax dollars. Local tax dollars, we collect about 4 million on the INS side and about 17 million for the operations side. The rest comes from state aid. Okay, so 21 million of the 83 million would be local effort. The rest would be state aid. Okay. On behalf of the administration and the entire board of trustees, thank you for coming. This is great. I'm going to hand over the mic to Mr. Smith.
Well, thank you very much. Mr. Rios gave me about 35 seconds to prepare for this, so thank you for that great warning. This is helpful information to me. This last bar chart was an eye-opener to me. I would not have expected security to be top of priority for us as a team. Not saying that security is not important. Where my brain was at is the campus stability. I think middle school campus is still a priority of mine. When you look at what Mr. Mesa presented, 40 million, rough math. I don't know if you totaled that up, anybody totaled that up, but I'd like to know the number. I just came up with 40 off of just real quick math. It'd take a while to put $40 million back in the district based on, what did you say, the sustainable income advantage was 1.5 million, right? So we get that 1 year boost from the wind farm, and then the sustainable piece is about another $1.5 million worth of usable tax money. That'll take a while to make 40 million gap get closed there. But anyway, the participation here was very helpful to me. I support the program, so I wasn't one of the, whatever it was, 3% that did not in the room. So, but anyway, thank you very much for the attendance today and the input to the survey. Yeah, we've got some refreshments up front for everybody, and I apologize I won't be able to stick around and talk. I've got another engagement to go to at 7 o'clock. So, but I know the other board members would be interested in hearing some input out here in the lobby. Anyway, thank you very much. Appreciate it.